Hi, Tristan. Welcome back.
Hey, Andy,
Um,
thank you for having me back.
it was so good to talk to you last time, and we had a really great chat afterwards. And we thought, why don't we have another great chat and just roll with whatever we want to talk about? Because we're both very inspired by recovery,
Mhm.
dopamine, energy, self-motivation, and all these kind of things. Because we've both kind of been to rock bottoms. So, for anyone who doesn't know you, you are a stroke survivor, and you have remastered your whole mind, body, and being around these amazing principles of doing hard things and challenging the self on purpose. And you're a coach and you help people who are recovering from stroke, which is amazing, incredible stuff. And so we wanted to talk about identity today, amongst other
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
yeah. So it's wonderful that you opened it up as I'm a stroke survivor because that's touches right on exactly what I want to talk about. Um, so we're going to keep it specific to strokes, and then we'll branch out. Okay.
Hmm.
When, and I'll use my personal experience. Okay. When I identified as a stroke survivor, when I claimed the stroke as mine, or um, identified with or as the stroke, whatever, I allowed the stroke, the event that happened that ruined my old life, to have more control over my current life than what I had. I used it as a
Mm.
scapegoat, reasons why I would or wouldn't or could or couldn't do certain things, and it limited me severely. When I started separating myself by calling it the stroke, I had a stroke,
Mm.
I started like distancing myself from it, and I started learning that I am my own man.
Hmm.
This is my life. This is not the stroke's life. I can do whatever the hell I want to, and yeah, so that's whenever I really started gaining freedom from that event that happens.
And what led you to that conclusion that it's not your stroke, it's just a stroke? How did you reach that?
Hmm. I honestly forgot. It was around the time that I heard that the subconscious believes everything we say. It's unable to tell the difference between when we're joking and when we're telling the truth. And that's when I stopped saying that I was a dumbass or that I couldn't remember anything because of my brain surgery to my stroke. So when I
Mm.
started saying things like I'm a very sarcastic man, and I'll be like, I'm a genius whenever I forget something, and I started separating myself from the stroke, and I realized that I started doing that before I changed my diet and stuff like that, and I noticed that my cognition, my mental clarity, my ability to think and process things started increasing.
Mm.
And I am a much more intelligent man now than I was back then, just 3 years ago now.
And
And
wiser too, I bet.
absolutely. And it's absolutely insane how important words are in our lives, and we are not taught anything about them except how to spell them. Which,
Mm.
if you spell words, that means words are spells.
Mm.
Abracadabra, popular saying nowadays is abracadabra in English means with my words I create.
Mm. I heard that
So,
recently.
in the
It is
Bible,
true, though.
yeah, in the Bible, God spoke everything into existence. As far as I know, I've never read the Bible personally. It's what I've heard,
Mm.
um, and that right there goes to show that our words have power.
Yeah. Well, in my book, I talked a lot about mindset, and it's not just, hippie stuff. The
Mm-hmm.
way that we think literally just determines which neurotransmitters we're going to be led by. So if we choose challenge, go towards challenge and use it to strengthen the self, we're using dopamine.
Oh yeah.
But if we see it as stress and a problem and we're a victim of it, we're actually running from it, we're aversive to it, and that is more glutamate activated, which also
Mm-hmm.
triggers pain, fatigue, and a bunch of other so-called negative emotions. So it's not just oh, happy families. Let's pretend to be everything's positive. It's real. It's real neurotransmitter and science.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You
So
said
yes,
something
the
there real quick.
words.
You mentioned running from it.
Mm,
The longer you run from your thoughts, the longer they will chase you, the longer they
mm-hmm.
will hang out in the back of your mind, and the longer they will torment you.
100%.
I did that for a long time, over 2.5 years. And I finally decided to do the thing that I was the most afraid of, which was sit in a dark, quiet room and let those thoughts in my mind. I
Awesome.
was deathly afraid. And you know what I
Yep.
realized? All that self hatred that I lived with my entire life, all those negative things I said about myself my entire life, they all came from that one man that abused me for most of my
Mm-hmm.
childhood. When
Because
I
we're
realized
taught.
that, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that we're taught to hate ourselves. We're not born that way, you
Oh,
know?
yeah, absolutely. It's like hatred is a taught thing. You know, you see kids. I think we mentioned this last time. You see kids play with everyone on the playground, no matter what race, color, religion, creed they are. They
Mm-hmm.
only care about how the other kids treat others. Kids are so inclusive, and
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy because society corrupts them, and it's sad. Getting back on topic though, I realized that those thoughts were not mine, and I kept carried those with me, and they were
Mm.
echoes of that man. And I decided, I was like, I don't want that man as part of my life. I don't want him taking up space in my mind. So I attached those thoughts to him,
Mm.
and I separated myself. And once I
Mm.
did that, once I like recognized those thoughts and attached them, they started leaving my mind. And so
Yes,
when they
and
left my mind, go ahead.
recognizing them is so important because we kind of just repress them and let them just bounce around in the back of their head and not realize how much they're influencing ourselves and bringing shame or guilt or anger to us. But you did
Absolutely.
the hard thing, like you did something really difficult, and that is where all the growth is, and you chose that. So
Oh
it's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. I like to say I prefer to choose my punishment than to feel like life is punishment. You know.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I have a walkthrough, like an introduction and a walkthrough of my dark quiet room method, my DQRM as I call it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's on my YouTube, and I filmed that like a year and a half ago, so it may be time to update that. We'll see. Um, yeah, I've had great. Let me just pull up a couple messages real quick, some reviews that I've had from guiding people through my dark quiet room method.
Yeah.
If you're cool with it,
Awesome. I'd love to hear them.
cool. One moment. Here we go. And I can send these to you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it at? It's one man. He said, I was nervous too because it's taught to deal with those emotions I've been avoiding on purpose. After going through it, it made me realize I was making it a bigger thing in my head than what it was. Honestly, the nuggets you gave me during the call truly helped as well.
Mm. Amazing.
That's one of them. And yeah, it's transform like it's so simple and it is not easy. Like we said last
Yep.
time, you know.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. I also say it's sometimes change is the hardest thing we've ever done. And that's why it works because easy doesn't work. Easy wrecks dopamine and hard builds it. So everything we do that is a challenge, especially if it's something for our longer term good, which all of this stuff really is, and all the instant stuff is just for our instant good, which just wears off and builds up tolerance. Like all the hard stuff is where the growth happens. And it activates dopamine to do hard things because we need some dopamine to initiate any difficult task at all. Um, that pushes it down, and then it's able to rise. So, like from many different perspectives, like the difficult stuff is what we need to do, and that's where people say do the hard work. You know, do the work on yourself, and it will pay off, and you will feel better. Like we feel so free after that, right?
yeah, it's we are told constantly that we are victims in our lives.
Yeah.
When we start to take our power back by willingly punishing ourselves with cold showers, with exercising, with actually going outside and get some sun on our bodies, and keeping a consistent sleep schedule, you will feel so much more empowered than ever before in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you combine that with using your free will and choosing what you eat and being diligent about it instead of just going into the store and buying whatever here in America, you know. It's quite simply amazing how much power we have and how much
Yeah.
power they hide from us, you know?
Yeah, well, I don't eat sugar in most of my life. I only use sugar, a small amount of it, as a reward for hard work because I want to
Hmm.
keep my dopamine system functioning. Because you have to reward your effort if you want functioning dopamine. You need both the effort and the reward, and then rest. Did you find that eating less sugar helped you? Because it helps me massively now because I can choose when my dopamine spikes and I reward myself. But did you cut down on sugar?
So I have a very, very, I don't want to say intense. I love sweet things.
Oh,
Okay.
me too.
Love eating them.
Yeah.
When I ate candies and ultra processed foods, I loved sour candies. I loved like Warheads. What are they called? Sour Patch Kids, Sour
Mm-hmm.
Skittles, and all that. And, all the chocolate stuff. I like to make the distinction between processed sugar and natural sugar. So, like, you've
Mm-hmm.
got cane sugar and all that stuff. And then, because I cut cane sugar out of my diet 3 years ago, and anytime I try to drink something or eat something that has even a little bit of cane sugar, I feel like a crackhead that's going without crack for 2 weeks. Okay. When I eat natural sugars like coconut sugar, date sugar, honey, stuff like that, maple syrup, I find that it hits my dopamine in a different way. So it's like not addicting and it's very enjoyable. So like, oh, and fruits as well. I love fruits. Oh my god.
Mm. It would be a less quick release, like a different index of what do they call it? Glycemic index.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
And it's
just
easier to
a
process as well.
slower, yeah, yeah.
And so it's I like to say if it was made by God, cool, I would eat it. If it's not made
Mm,
by God, I'd stay. If it was made in a lab, I'd stay away from it personally.
mm.
And use
Well,
your personal or your freedom of choice.
all these ultra processed foods, they are designed to be addicting. They are designed to be as tasty and dopamine spiking as possible.
Yep.
And when we just randomly, or personally, when I randomly have them in my day at any random times, my energy and dopamine and motivation is flying all over the place like a roller coaster.
Yep.
Yet if I make sure I do, like you get up and do your hard stuff first thing in the morning, and then if I give myself the reward afterwards, I want to repeat that. But if I just reward any old thing, then like inaction, then my brain just wants to repeat inaction. And then the next stage after reward is rest. So it just wants to rest. So if I want a productive and active day, I just need to do the effort and then the reward. And it really, really works for me.
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. And that actually makes sense why I like to pour honey on my eggs and steak. So I cook eggs just about every morning,
Mm.
and I'll give you my egg recipe if you want it.
Okay.
So
Although I don't really eat honey very much because
yeah,
it for me, even fruits are dopamine spiking, so I will save
hmm,
those for reward as well, but I still eat them. I like bananas.
yeah, you're completely fine. Like I said, personal choice.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's what works for you.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I have 2.5 years ago, no, about 3 years ago, I knew nothing about cooking. Now I can make some delicious meals. I call myself a five-star chef. So
Awesome.
in my eggs, I put A2 milk. I use diatomaceous earth right now. Um, I put turmeric, cayenne, garlic, ginger, oregano, and what is there's a spice that starts with a C.
Cilantro.
Cilantro, yes. Put all that on there. Put a little bit of
We call it coriander here.
coriander, really.
Yeah,
I
that's what
thought
we
coriander
call
was
it.
something else. Might be
No, it's the
like,
same exact thing.
really?
Oh, at least it is here. But see, here we call peppers capsicums.
Really?
And yeah, yeah, we never call it peppers unless it's actual black pepper, ground pepper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
But
I,
because we watch all of your shows, we know what you say. So we just call it that when we're talking to
fair
you
enough.
guys.
I love learning different cultures and dialects. This is awesome. Um,
Yeah. Oh, ours is weird. It's
so
funny.
so is it's here. It's weird as hell here too.
Mhm.
Um, anyways, yeah, I
So
scramble all
is
that
this
up
a
and then I top it with
scrambled?
honey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, is it a
Yeah.
scrambled recipe? Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
I tried to eat hard boiled eggs, texture and taste, eh. I tried to eat
Mm,
fried eggs, texture and taste, eh. Scrambled eggs though, amazing. Oh, I also put A2
mm,
milk in the eggs as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, nice. Speaking of fried, when I personally eat fried things,
Mm-hmm.
um, I actually experience joint pain from eating fried things.
Really?
I don't know if it's because generally, if it's fried, someone else has fried it in oil many times, like the oil that's been used so many times that it's basically turned into like sludge.
What kind of oil
Um,
is it fried in?
well, I don't know because if I go out somewhere, like last night, I ate out and I had like chicken schnitzel. Do you have that?
Never heard of that before. I know I've
It's
heard of schnitzel. I think it's
it's
like a German thing.
flattened chicken, like it's a flattened fillet of chicken breast, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's got crumb on the outside, and they deep fry it. What would you
Mm-hmm.
call that? Filet or something?
Just fried chicken, potentially.
Yeah,
I honestly, yeah.
yeah. And then they build things on top of it. But because it's been in that fryer, this morning I really felt like my shoulders and joints. And if I eat like some chips or something that have been fried, like if it's been in really hot oil, actually any cooked oil, even if I fry it myself and the oil gets over a certain temperature, I really feel it in my joints. And that's just me. And I don't think this happens to everyone.
So, what kind of oil do you cook it with, though?
Olive, any oil that's been heated up because I found because I do fasting. If I do fasting, all my joint pain goes away. And if I eat raw vegan, all like so everything just raw and like you said, made by God, all my joint pain goes away. But if I eat cooked nuts, like roasted nuts, it comes back because I think the oils over a certain temperature, oil just it gives my joints pain. But like these days, I don't eat much of that, so it's not much of a problem. And
Mm-hmm.
I mostly eat just meat and veggies.
Hell yeah. I will
Yeah.
say I heard that olive oil is best to top meals with. Whenever
Oh
it
yeah.
gets heated, it can become rancid, so that could be a contributing factor. I like to
I
cook
do
with.
like
Go ahead.
I do like to top meals with just some fresh olive oil,
Mm-hmm.
just for flavor. And we're eating it like fresh and raw. It's got a
Mm-hmm.
lot of benefits. It's good
Oh
stuff.
yeah, I prefer.
Mm.
I personally like to cook my meals with ghee, especially
Oh yeah.
A2 ghee because it's easier to digest.
Hmm.
And yeah, ghee adds so it's like it's what is it? I think it's like cultured butter. If I'm
Yeah, it's
correct.
clarified.
Clarified butter. Yeah,
It's got
it's
all the protein taken out of it, and it's just the fat.
absolutely delicious.
Mm.
Amazing. Yeah.
So before I wrote my book, I was actually really sensitive to any dairy except for ghee. So it must have been the milk protein. But I found ways to, because it would trigger migraine, which is chronic pain. So I found ways to lower my chronic pain and it took all my migraines away. So now I can eat whatever dairy that I want to.
Now, do y'all have A2 dairy like primarily,
Yeah.
or is it A1 A2?
We have both. The A2 is the expensive one that's a bit
Mm-hmm.
harder to get.
Yeah, because do you know anything about A2 dairy?
Yeah, I know that goats produce the A2 protein, whereas most mainstream cows are on the A1 and a lot of people react to it.
Do you know the reason behind that?
I don't know why we react to that protein, no.
No. So the reason why most cows nowadays produce the A1 protein instead of the A2, from articles I've read. Okay, so use like this is just what I've read.
Mm.
The Industrial Revolution, whenever they brought the cows from the farms, from actual pastures and living how cows are supposed to living in factories and being fed or getting fed like grains and stuff, it
Mm.
caused a gene mutation. They stopped producing the A2 milk, which is A2 protein, which is made by humans as well. That's why it's easier to digest. They started making A1 because the cows were living in chronic conditions. They were developing all kinds of diseases. That's another reason why raw milk was banned here in the States.
Mm. Yeah, if the cows are unhealthy, yeah, the milk's going to be unhealthy too. And yeah, grain isn't their natural diet. They're supposed to be eating grass. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so diet's been important to your recovery, and because it also helps with inflammation, and inflammation really influences like how our body feels, and also depression. Inflammation can be really bad for depression. So yeah, just having the body run well is a good idea.
Oh yeah, I lost 30 pounds in 3 months whenever I swapped all the ultra processed foods for natural foods with similar flavor profiles.
Yeah,
That's all I
nice.
did.
Yep, awesome.
Hmm.
And what we were going to talk about identity as well, and
Hmm.
other sort of things that you personally use to help your and other people's recovery.
Yeah. So this will be easier to pull up an article for. So one second, let me get this article ready. Here we go. This is an article I've been referencing in a lot of my recent videos. So can I present? Slides and PDF. Share screen. Lit. Let's see.
I'm not seeing it yet.
1 second. So, lit. Okay. Can you see?
No, I can still see you.
What? It says stop sharing.
If you want, you can just read it out
Okay,
and
cool.
we'll link to it.
So the importance of BDNF and stroke recovery and rehabilitation. This covers literally everything that I did, and I did some more things that helped improve my stroke recovery over 2.5 years afterwards.
And
So
is this what guided your process, or did you find this later?
no, I found this later.
Mm.
Like my mind was blown. I found this on a connection call with a potential client. John, if you're listening to this, dude, you are amazing. Um, so how to increase BDNF? You improve your sleep, go to bed and wake up around the same time. Uh, Block blue light as much as possible, so that's why I'm wearing blue light blockers, because I'm going to lay down here in about an hour and a half.
Mhm.
Avoid exercise, a lot of things like that, and then
Avoid exercise.
late at night. So 4 hours before is a good thing to do. It's been recommended a lot of times, and that's what I teach or share in my coaching program. So BDNF boosting foods. Says unprocessed quality foods are essential staples for elevation of BDNF. In fact, the Mediterranean diet. Wait, it's still sharing. In fact, the Mediterranean diet, which I personally don't follow, where to go? A low-fat diet known to counteract inflammation. So let me just touch on this. Low fat is actually toxic for us because our body needs fat, right? Our brain runs on fat. Our body uses
Mhm.
fat as a fuel source. It's the artificial fats. Actually, no. Our bodies store toxins in the extra fat, right? That's why
Mhm.
fat people from 1920s looked much different than fat people nowadays, because
Mm.
fat people from 1920s, I honestly don't know why they were bigger. Um, Obese people now, they intake so many toxins because through their food that their body is pushing all of that away from their organs to try to preserve itself.
Right.
Anyways, so this says a list of food sources that are boosters for BDNF are olive oil, coffee, soy. I like to stay away from soy. Grapes, green tea, turmeric, fish with omega-3, leafy green vegetables, and eggs. I eat a lot of those. Says manage stress, connect with others, and yeah. And my coaching includes more than this, which is lit. I like to, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and eat, taking the time to prepare meals also delays the gratification.
Mm-hmm.
And even though the flavor is enjoyable, it's not spiked with all of these extra sugars and sweeteners and preservatives and things. So
Absolutely.
that's also good from a dopamine perspective when we're not just getting the chips and the chocolate and anything instant and extremely spiking for dopamine.
Yeah, and on top of that, you can also put an intention in with your food. And have you heard of what is her name? I think it's Eileen McCusick. Have
No,
you
I
heard of
don't
her?
think so. Mm-mm.
She has run plenty of tests that show the way that we speak to our water can
Oh, yes,
shape it, you know?
I have seen this, yeah.
Yeah. And so speaking intention into your food, blessing your food can provide good results or benefits. And it's
Yeah.
awesome. Because like
And
you can fill the food that you're cooking with love and it can taste even better. If you're cooking and you're not really conscious of it or you're like in a negative mood, it could taste worse. It's very interesting.
mm. And also, if you're just choosing to think about things in a way of gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
then it's just going to feed back into your own mentality as well. And optimism and things like that are actually proven to help the brain,
Oh yeah,
you
absolutely.
know. Yeah.
Like I say regularly, you will only heal as well as you think you can heal.
Yeah.
One of my popular videos is, do you know who Dr. Steph Young is?
No.
Okay, so she posted a video a while ago covering how doctors come up with expectations after a medical crisis. Okay. Um, Long story short, she said that doctors come up with those through statistics. And last time I checked,
Mm,
humans are not statistics. We are
mm,
humans. In my opinion,
mm,
we have unlimited healing potential as long as we get
mm.
out of our ways. And one way that we lose is by beating ourselves in the mind by believing those limited beliefs, those expectations, right?
Yeah,
Because they're the
because if
professionals, they know everything.
mm.
Yeah, that's
And if you believe, like one of your videos, I think the first one I saw from you that made me think, okay, this person's really interesting, is if you think you can't recover, then that's going to be true. And if you think you can, then that's going to be true. Because there's been a lot of studies where if you think that it is impossible to escape, for example, there were studies called helplessness, learned helplessness.
mm-hmm.
If an animal makes many attempts to escape and learns that it is impossible and then it just can't, it will actually give up and go into a state of learned helplessness that
Yep,
looks very similar to depression, and it will just not try. Um, and there's a lot of neurotransmitters playing into why this happens, but we can inflict that on ourselves just with our mindset. And
yep,
so we need to work to challenge that. And I would say to people, challenge any diagnosis that you get, because I used to be convinced that I had ADHD. And I really had all of the symptoms of it. But when I learned to use dopamine and effort and focus to change my attention span, like I taught myself to have a long attention span. And then all the other symptoms of ADHD went away and I could think properly and I could organize, you know. And so I would challenge that diagnosis. But a lot of people use that identity and go, oh, well, this is why I can't. The
yep.
diagnosis is why I can't. And then we might be tempted to slip into a helplessness situation.
Yeah, that directly ties back to what I said at the beginning.
Mm,
When I said that I was a stroke survivor and that it was my stroke, I used that diagnosis, that label, as the scapegoat. You know, and then when I
mm.
started, I don't know why I say so much. When I started separating myself, I started recreating myself and becoming a much better version of myself, which is lit.
Yeah. I love that you recreated yourself. So do you identify with anything anymore, or
Yeah.
coach,
So
or
I don't know what I was about to say. I identify with many positive things. I am amazing. I am a genius. I am incredibly strong. I am a fantastic man. I am so funny and sarcastic and witty and stuff like that
mm,
because I enjoy those things. I have
yeah.
proven that I'm those things and I've made those things part of who I am because I enjoy them.
And you choose those things
Yep.
rather than someone inflicting some diagnosis on you and saying, well, this is what you are and that is why you can't improve.
Well, if being sarcastic and joking and funny were diagnoses, then I would totally identify with those.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have that many like labels that I identify with really, generally, because I remember reading in some Eckhart Tolle books that they just limit us. And someone asked me on a different podcast who I am at my core, and I really thought, how do you explain that? Like I don't generally label myself, so I got a bit stuck. I'm like, I don't know. But I know who I am at my core. I just know it.
Mhm.
But putting it into words is
Yeah.
a different thing. But we were talking earlier about Stephen Pressfield, and his book was really inspiring to me, called The War of Art. And he says to turn pro. So turning pro is for me a bit of an identity. Because when I sort of wake up and I do my writing, and that's how I got my book written, I would wake up and like pretend that I was at work, but I'm the boss, I'm the only one who needs to be impressed, or, I have to show up for myself. Um, and so turning pro was kind of like an identity I put on myself. So I'm like, well, I am a writer. I am here to write. That is my job. That's what I choose to do. And so that's how I got it done. I just, every morning in the page of my diary, I would write turn pro. And so I'd remember that, yes, I'm here to do a job and I will get it done. But I think
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of the time we show up and we work hard for other people, not only for the praise, but because the paycheck is there waiting for us and that is our reward. Yet when we want to show up and do our own work, if we haven't set a reward, which is a dopamine reward, what are we going to work towards? We just sit there and think, oh, I'm bored, I'm going to scroll, or I'm going to watch something, or like, let's go have a snack because we're bored. But we need to set a reward. And when we get started, if that's the hardest part, go, well, when I get started, I'll get this reward. And it might be whatever our vice might be. It might be a cup of coffee or something.
Hmm.
And then we'll say, all right, well, after 2 hours, that's what my chosen time frame was. And that's also how I learned to focus again, 2 hours at a time. I will sit here and focus, and then I will have my dopamine reward after that. And that's how school works. Like we sit there and we are supposed to be learning to focus. Not, I mean, you could think of it like, oh, you're sitting there and you're taught how to become a factory worker, to be a cog in the machine and work for the man. But also, we need to say, what am I getting out of this? I can increase my focus. I can learn to do hard things, difficult things, and then I get my playtime or my lunchtime as the reward at the end. And that is structure that if we choose to learn from it, we can get a lot out of it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I would like to tie that into like quitting vices, because that's another niche that I have. My two niches are
Mm,
stroke survivors and people who want to quit vices. And
awesome.
quitting vices. And yes, that also relates to stroke survivors, because, or people who've had a stroke, is how I call them. Because
Yep.
as we were talking just before we started recording, people who had a stroke often rely on things to distract them from their new reality.
Mm,
And those things, most of the time, are detrimental to our lives. So, like for me, I use adult videos. We'll keep it like that.
hmm
I use that to cope with the abuse that I experienced as a child, and then it doubled down after I had the stroke and the surgeries, and I chased dopamine through dating apps and casual encounters with women, through drinking, through smoking, through vaping, through video games every night, through going out and partying. I did everything I could to distract myself, and if I had nothing, I would scroll on my phone because I hated being in this reality.
mm.
I wanted to leave this realm so bad that I referred to sleep as my 8 hour trial of death.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
And
when was this in your life? What period of your life?
this was the 2.5 years after the first 2.5 years after I had the stroke and brain surgeries,
Mm,
because I felt powerless. I,
mm.
just, I was existing. I was alive. I was not living,
Yep.
and yeah.
I've also
So,
been through being suicidal and depressed way back in my life, in my 20s, my early 20s. Um, and yeah, it's rock bottom stuff. But I think because my self-esteem was so low, I didn't know how to use my dopamine. My dopamine was really low because my mood was low and I was depressed. So of course I was going to look for vices, and I was using amphetamines back then. Luckily, I escaped that. Um, but yeah, I've got some really cool dopamine hacks for addiction. So I want to hear yours.
ooh, hell yeah. Yeah, we'll just compare notes. So people focus on quitting, right? They put the whole focus on quitting, and that puts their attention on that thing that they're trying to quit. So when they don't have that
Mm,
thing, they miss it.
yeah.
A running joke that I will get back to whenever I start posting about the quitting vices, you've got to fill your holes. Okay. If you start trying to quit a vice, you will leave a hole. Your hole wants to be filled desperately.
With
When you,
dopamine.
there we go. So when that hole does not get filled, it is going to start demanding to be filled. And if you don't fill it with something else, you're going to go back to that thing that you're trying to quit. So instead of focusing on quitting, focus on replacing. So like for me, I replaced, well, actually, it was quite simple or easy for me to quit vaping because I learned about the ingredients and how they were affecting me, and how ever since I've been passionate about it. So I went cold turkey with that.
Mm.
With the adult videos, okay, every time I got a hit or a very strong urge, I would either work out or I took a cold shower. I
Perfect.
reprogrammed my dopamine, my subconscious, to whenever I felt that desire, I would immediately do something else. Because whenever I tried to sit and fight it and feel it, I always gave in.
Right.
So when I started changing the stimulus that feeling was demanding, it made it much easier to quit it.
Yeah. And you know what? Your technique is exactly the same as mine. I think this is why we're on the same level with so many things. So, from a dopamine perspective, when we think of the vice, the brain actually gives us a little hit of dopamine. It actually releases dopamine in anticipation. And so that rewards us. So we think it again. We get rewarded. We think it again. So addiction is the obsessive thought loop. But then when we actually go have whatever the substance or activity is, we don't actually get that much dopamine from it. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you last time, but cocaine addicts actually get more dopamine from the thought of cocaine than when injected with real cocaine in a lab. Um, and so it's in our head. Addiction is thought after thought. So instead of rewarding it with a dopamine spike, we punished it or we interrupted it with a dopamine drop, with something hard like the cold shower, the workout. And I do exactly the same thing. I'll do push-ups or sit-ups when I have the obsessive or repetitive thought, or chili sauce on a spoon, or you would call that hot
Ooh.
pepper sauce.
I am
Um,
way too white for that. I may have red hair and spicy stuff. I have a very low tolerance to it.
yeah, well, I did as well, but I've started to deliberately use it
Mhm.
because also there's links between whether you can tolerate chili sauce and how much chronic pain you have. The
Mhm.
more chili sauce on average, this is just a statistic, but
Mhm.
the more chili sauce one can tolerate, the lower chronic pain they have because it's a sensitization thing. So
That's
if we're
interesting.
avoiding pain, people who avoid pain get more pain. People who go towards pain get less pain. It's
See,
it's
and
like anything.
that's the reason why I started incorporating cayenne into my cooking. Well, because it has a couple benefits. After the stroke, I wanted to increase blood flow.
Yep,
Cayenne helps increase blood flow. It also increases
amazing.
my the amount of manliness that I feel because my mouth, if I add too much, my mouth is on fire. I'm like, it doesn't help at all. Um, and yeah, like I have a low tolerance to it, and I still cook with it because it has so many benefits.
Yeah, and that's doing a hard thing, That little bit of pain in the immediate pays
Mm-hmm.
off long term. There's some interesting studies on how bitter foods generally are used as medicine. There's very few sweet medicines. But these days we add all this sugar to medicine. So
Mm-hmm.
it might be that part of what the bitter herbs traditionally were used as medicine because it's unpleasant to take them. So we have to lower our dopamine to actually have them. And then dopamine may rise afterwards because dopamine isn't just mental health and
Mm-hmm.
physical energy, it also plays into the immune system, which is really interesting.
Well, yeah, and it plays into the how much we heal as well. You know, like
Yes,
cold
it
showers.
does.
There are so many benefits with cold showers, and I believe the reason is because we get in, we do a hard thing, and we feel good about ourselves. And when we feel good
Yep.
about ourselves, our body is able to heal better because we are out of our own way. Like we conquered that challenge,
Mm-hmm.
and we get out of our own way. We're celebrating instead of punishing ourselves.
Yeah, and now we trust ourselves to do hard things. So when hard things come up in our life, we remember the other things we've done by choice and we're confident. We go towards them and we say, bring it on instead of, I'm scared.
Absolutely, yeah, that's fantastic. It's a warrior versus a victim mindset, or a
Totally.
conqueror versus victim mindset. I'm going to start using that one. Hell yeah.
Yeah. I say, do we master our dopamine or do we want to be a victim of it?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Hell yeah.
And welcome other masters.
Yeah. It's lit to be on this side of the equation.
Yeah, and the thing is, like anyone can access this. Like it doesn't matter what you've been through. And some of the worst, like if you've been through the darkest times, you've got more to teach others.
Oh,
So if
absolutely.
anyone's listening to this and they think, well, but I'm different because I've been through so much worse, and maybe you have, but that is where the fire will come from, and you will help other people when you turn it around and choose to use that to your advantage instead of letting it crush you.
Yeah, so I got really excited whenever you said that because when you said that, I remembered a thought that I had when I was at the part-time job that I work. People who have hard lives are actually more privileged than people who have easy lives because we learn from the shit that
Yes.
we go through, or we have the option to learn from the shit we go through. People who have
Mm,
easy lives, they feel like their lives are so hard. People who have hard lives, when we get stuck in traffic, it's not as big of a deal. People who have easy
mm,
lives, if they're stuck in traffic, they are losing their minds.
mm.
Uh, People with hard lives, whenever we get faced with an inconvenience, we're able to move past it because we've been severely inconvenienced most of our lives, or have had at least one severe inconvenience. People who've had easy lives think everything's an inconvenience because they've never faced a real inconvenience, like a real
Yeah.
challenge. You know?
And they're just sitting there chasing their dopamine, most of them,
Mm-hmm.
and not doing the hard things. And so it's going to flatline. It's just going to hit a false ceiling, and their
Oh yeah,
dopamine is going to eventually turn into depression because they're not pushing it down on purpose so that it can have a proper rise. It's all this external chasing of alcohol or, caffeine or sugar or whatever it happens to be,
and that is absolutely
drugs.
a big contribution to the poor mental health of the world now.
Mm.
Everything's just so accessible. You got people who go out and go to parties and get all that immediate dopamine, and then the next day they feel like shit because one, they drank all night, and two, they don't have the dopamine anymore.
Mm. Yep. Yep, it's a bit like a wave. It goes up and it goes down. But
Yeah.
if we start to author that a little bit on purpose, we can use it
Mm-hmm.
to our advantage instead of it just, kicking our butt all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for people who might have had a stroke or are suffering with vices or anything addictive, where can they find you and connect with you?
Yeah, Instagram is Captain underscore orangutan. TikTok
Yep.
is CAP underscore O underscore. YouTube is Captain Orangutan, and Facebook is Captain Orangutan.
Yep.
Those
So they'll
are,
find you. You're pretty easy to find.
yeah, yeah, it's very unique. I was thinking
Yep.
about changing it to Captain Leprechaun because it's more fitting. I'm a school teacher, you know, and I have the pot of luck or the pot of gold whenever it comes to to recovering from this stuff. We'll see. I don't know. Captain Orangutan is very unique though, so
Yeah. So you're quite a funny guy. Did you find that using humor was a way to also help your mindset in recovery?
hmm, that's a loaded question. So I've always been more of the silly joking kind of guy,
Okay.
and before the stroke and surgeries is because I learned it as a way to get the attention off my little brother while I was at the house. So
Mm,
I got hit more instead of him, which later
mm,
found out that that only worked when I was there. Well intentioned. I kept that as part of my personality because it helps get the bullies off of me in middle school. So I was bullied for having red
mm,
hair until middle
mm.
school. I started taking it as a joke and like taking it as compliments and stuff, and I made so many friends. Um,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I kept it for as like a people pleasing type thing.
So it's
And
survival really to start
yes,
with.
and I used a lot of self depreciating humor. And
Mm,
after the stroke and surgeries, and after I learned that our subconscious is unable to tell the difference between when we're being serious and when we're joking, I started like hyping myself up as a joke. It's amazing. And even
mm,
whenever I've gotten to the point where even my insults are positive. So like when somebody
mm,
says something stupid, I'm like, damn, you're really intelligent, aren't you? you know, and
mm, mm,
it's yeah. I love joking. I love being positive. I love humor.
Humor
And
is quite disarming, isn't it? Like, even in a tense situation, if everyone's on high alert, something funny, it just has this power to relax us and make us kind of trust the person in a way.
so it depends on the human because I meet so many people that get so pissed off at me because I'm a witty guy. Whenever I ask somebody if they want help, yeah, if you don't mind, my immediate response is, well, if I didn't mind, I wouldn't do it. And I get mixed reactions to that. Some people find it funny, some people get mad. They're like, why would you say that? It's like, I was taught to mind when I was little, and if I didn't mind, I got beat. So yeah, that joke always falls flat with those people. Some people just choose to hate everything in their lives. It's completely fine. I choose to love everything in my life. And
Mm,
so whenever those people come across me, they are unable to get why they think that I've had an easy life and I'm just a happy-go-lucky guy, which is the
mm,
opposite case. I've had a majority of my life has been torturous, to say the least.
mm,
And I have turned it around to where it's benefited me instead of
mm,
being trapped in that loop.
mm. And that reminds me of the journaling that I think we've talked about, where we actually approach the most difficult emotions. And I remember when I learned to do this, it was extremely cathartic and freeing because it got the stuff out of my head. And
Mm-hmm.
it's repetitive, it's hard, it's boring, it's not enjoyable at all. Like, it's threatening, but going towards that stuff, people don't realize how freeing that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it works because we know that glutamate, which is the neurotransmitter of pain, fatigue, and negative emotion and repressed emotion, we're allowed to let that stuff out. And a lot of people, and there's been books written about this as well, especially one by Dr. John E. Sarno. He was a back surgeon, and he talked about how letting out and confronting and dealing with and naming all these difficult emotions helped his back surgery patients more than the surgery. And so he actually stopped doing surgery because these techniques were so empowering and just reduced the pain of his patients. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's like in one of the videos that I posted within the past month, I told people the very first thing that I recommend for people who've had a stroke to do in their recovery is to fully feel all of those emotions because
Mm,
they will end up building up and they will cause chronic pain or inflammation or
hmm.
diseases
Yeah.
in our bodies. And so I had one guy said that you probably never had a stroke. How would you know? Have a
Mm,
stroke and then come talk to me. I was like, okay, buddy. you know, um,
yeah.
I'm just like, it's all Gucci. Um,
Mm,
yeah, feel those emotions. Actually, get to where you're comfortable, like in a safe and inviting environment, whether that's with people, whether that's by yourself. Make sure it's okay for you to feel those emotions. I used to go out and hit trees. I used to hit hard things because pain helped calm me down.
mm.
I would strongly advise you not do that because it caused a lot of um, physical and mental health issues. Because I thought that pain would bring me calmness, which was not the case. Um,
Well, some people who self-harm, they've found that it's just their quickest way of lowering dopamine so that
mhm.
it can rise again because it's been flatlining
Yeah,
for so long. So instead of doing something that damages the body, we can still have pain from doing squats or doing weights or something in a way
cold
that doesn't
exposure.
damage but strengthens the body.
Yeah, cold exposure because well, exercise is great, and cold exposure, I say it requires less. Well, this is from a guy that's been taking cold showers for 2.5 years. It requires less motivation and determination, especially since it's just part of my routine, and it can dramatically boost your mental and physical health in such a short time. Like after one session of cold water, you will feel amazing, like instantly,
Mm.
right after you get
And
out.
there's proof of this with dopamine as well. There's studies done on it. So I personally splash my face with the cold water. That's the first thing I do. And because it also, I think I've read that helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system to have cold water on the face. But also it's sort of a difficult part to do, I feel. But doing that bit first helps me to handle the rest of it. It's like, well, I'm in now, my
Yep.
face is covered with cold water. I might as well
Yep.
jump in. So that's what I use to help me get in. Once I've done that, I'm all
Hell
in.
yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah, it's like conquering the day. As soon as you get that
Mm.
done, everything else is just a bonus,
Yep.
Like no matter what it is.
Yep.
Yeah, I
If you
remember I
make
used
your
to,
morning hard, the rest of the day is relatively easy.
absolutely. Yeah, I remember I used to, I think I mentioned this last time. I used to get very, very intense road rage. And
Mm-hmm.
after I started taking cold showers and I started doing all the things that helped me heal better, I got a flat tire on the way to work one day. And I just laughed it off. I was like, damn, this is very awesome, And I changed the tire and I went on to, went on to work, I was like, damn,
Mm.
that was the time that I noticed that I was like actually really improving.
Yeah.
It was lit, very lit.
Because it's not always what happens, but our reaction to what happens
Mm-hmm.
that dictates how we feel about it.
Yeah, our reaction is everything, right?
Mm.
What happens, happens. It's neither for or against us.
Mm.
Whenever people project hatred onto us, whenever people hate us, they're really projecting how they feel about themselves. So it's never about us, it's about them, or it's just something that's. Have you heard of the parable of the Chinese farmer?
I'm not sure.
Ooh, I'm going to look this up real quick. Actually, do I have it on my phone? I can send this to you. 1 second. The story of the Chinese farmer. This is a very good one. I did not pull it. Here we go. Oh, yeah. Okay, so here's how it goes. Once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer whose horse ran away. That evening, all of his neighbors came around to commiserate. They said, "We're so sorry to hear your horse has run away. This is most unfortunate." The farmer said, "Maybe."
Mm-hmm.
The next day, the horse came back bringing 7 wild horses with it. And in the evening, everyone came back and said, "Oh, isn't that lucky? What a great turn of events. Now you have 8 horses." The farmer once again said, "Maybe." The following day, his son tried to break one of the horses, and while riding it, he was thrown and broke his leg. The neighbors then said, "Oh dear, that's too bad." And the farmer responded, "Maybe." The next day, the conscription officers came around to conscript people into the army, and they had rejected his son because he had a broken leg. Again, the neighbors came by and said, "Isn't that great?" Again, he said, "Maybe." The whole process of nature is an integrated process of immense complexity. This and it's really impossible to tell whether anything that happens in it is good or bad, because you never know what will be the consequence of the misfortune, or you never know what will be the consequence of the good fortune. And within that story, I would like to point out something else. Whenever you say whenever you say you're sorry, you're identifying as sorry. You're saying that is your name, that is who you are. I like to say I apologize, because like I feel sorry. However, I will never say like I feel sorry for you. I just say I apologize if that happened or something like that, because
Or I
apologizing is
think
an
it
action.
means I think it means I feel sorrow. I assume that's what sorry means.
There we go. But like saying
Or I
I'm sorry though,
commiserate.
you're identifying as sorry. So like it's like saying I'm Tristan, right? I'm saying I'm Tristan. If I say I'm sorry, then I'm saying I'm sorry, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
Like identifying as sorry. That's how I see it, at least.
Yeah, and that's the same as if you say I am depressed. It's very different than saying I feel depressed or I feel anxious. I am not the anxiety. I'm just feeling temporary anxiety.
That's a way that I got over the depression and the crippling depression and anxiety and imposter syndrome that I struggled with. It's the same concept as identifying as a stroke survivor or an addict. I heard so with one guy that I'm helping, I'm coaching. He said the first thing that they do I think it's the 10-step process or whatever, the recovery process. They say that, or they have people identify as an addict, say they're worthless to their, or like helpless to their addiction or whatever. I'm just like, that is so ridiculous.
It's outdated.
No, it does nothing to benefit those people, because it's just reinforcing that victimhood belief, and it's just
Yeah.
yeah,
I've heard people say once an addict, always an addict. And I will tell you that I was addicted to amphetamines, and now I have completely, and for years, I've no interest, no want whatsoever. It's not repressed. I just have no need or want for amphetamines. I'm not an addict. I do use caffeine, but
hell yeah,
yeah, and probably there is some kind of physical dependency going on at the moment with me because I will get headaches if I don't have my caffeine. But I know that if I choose to step down, which I've done before, I can step down my caffeine. But at the moment, I'm using it for dopamine.
yeah. So if you would ever like to get on something that's less addictive or maybe even not addictive, I heard on a podcast episode that paraxanthine gives a lot of the similar benefits as caffeine, and it's not addictive. So like
Is
has
that
none of
from
the
green tea?
I I don't know. I heard it and I told one of my clients because he said he was like reliant on caffeine and he wanted to get off, and so I shared that podcast episode with him and he listened to it and he started using paraxanthine instead of caffeine, and he said it's much better. Like it's a much more
Okay.
clean energy. He said so.
Right.
It's
Cool.
Paraxanthine, I think.
All right. Interesting. I'll have a look into it.
And for anybody
Yeah,
listening,
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe this is the kick that I need to start going away from caffeine.
hell yeah,
But I do like the stuff. So,
yeah. I mean, it's
but like,
really
I
cool.
mean, being dependent on anything is a little bit of a constraint. It'd be nice to not be dependent because I found with fasting, it's nice to know that if I want to go 5 days without food, I'm confident to actually do that. 5 was hard. 3.5 is what I'd prefer to do.
Yeah,
Three
I've
and
heard
a
of people
half was
going on
manageable.
40. Like, there's one guy that I'm following on TikTok. He is working to heal, like, I think it's like stage 4 type of cancer. And he's in the middle of a 40-day fast. He's on like day 35 or 38 or something. I'm
Wow.
just like, God, that is so inspiring because I would like to do that. However, as of right now, I have no reason to go more than 2 or 3 days without food because
Mm,
I enjoy food. Like, I'll say,
mm.
especially
It has many benefits. It has longevity benefits, as I'm
mm-hmm.
sure you know, and inflammation benefits,
Yep.
and just mindset and dopamine benefits.
Mm-hmm.
But also there are studies that show, like you said, with cancer, that fasting, multi-day fasting, as well as high dose vitamin C have had really positive success with a number of cancers. So if anyone
Really?
happens to be listening to this and also is struggling with cancer, those two things have a lot of studies backing them up. If you just search them on NCBI, you can find them. There's so many natural things that will help the body to heal. And again, this isn't just hippie stuff because I want to believe in a fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
There's heaps of studies. Turmeric, garlic, um, black seed, the nigella seed, like so many natural compounds have anti-cancer properties. Ginger does.
Oh
You
yeah.
probably know a few.
We have everything. Like everything was created for us, and then what we have in modern day, at least in America, is a manipulation, a bastardization of nature to create more profit for, you know, uh, it's very interesting because at least I was told that nature has very little for us, whenever nature has everything for us.
Yeah, and a lot of these medicines are just based on natural compounds, but they just strip out whatever works and then patent it so that no one else can get it and pretend and tell us that's the only way forward. It really isn't the only way forward.
Not only that, though, they add other things to it to cause side effects that cause us to get on more prescriptions or more products.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
That's right. So if someone wants to use all the, chemotherapy and that's their choice, but also have a look at some alternatives, at
Oh
least
yeah,
have a look around and then choose.
yeah, absolutely. It's your life. Like I like to tell my clients, I will never tell you what you should do. I will always give you options of what you could do because
Yeah.
I will never. I like to say when somebody tells me what I should do, I'm like, are you trying to shit all over me? Don't shit all over me.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
never
right.
going to shit all over you. Yeah.
There's very few times where should is a positive word. Even if I should work out, no, I choose to work out. It's my choice,
Yeah.
even if it is something for us, but usually should is what other people want us to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tie that into another mindset principle that I have for people who are recovering from either a stroke or a vice. The difference between need and want, right? If you need to do something, that means the world's ending. If it doesn't get done, then you're going to die or the world's going to blow up or something. If you want to do something, that means that you are wanting to choose to do something, right? You are wanting a different path or wanting to get whatever. However, like I come across so many people that say they need to quit whatever or they need to get better in their stroke recovery. I'm just like, that's painting a negative picture. I know it seems positive. However, at least the way I perceive it, it's negative because like I said, it's the difference between world ending and simply wanting something different.
Yeah, need versus want. Because a lot of stuff that we want is just extraneous crap these days because we've got so much access to like just cheap, abundance, really. But yeah, it's sometimes helpful just to strip back to what we actually need to survive. And we have all that. We have everything we need right now to survive.
Absolutely.
We've got air, water, we've got food, we've got clothing, we've got shelter. Like we're okay. And to want, although some people say that wanting is of the ego, I think we need some kind of want to move forward. We have to want something better than what it is now so that we can use dopamine and move towards that thing. Yep. So it's how you use it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because,
So did you want to end with any sort of words of wisdom for people who are looking to connect with you?
Yeah, the thing that's coming to mind right now is you're only a victim once in your life. After that, you choose to be a victim. So like someone or something can victimize you in that moment. And after that, it's your choice to be a victim.
Wow, I love it. I've never heard that said before. Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thanks for that.
Because, I was victimized by the doctors and by the stroke and all that. I chose to be a victim for 2.5 years until I started taking my power back.
Yep. Taking responsibility to move forward. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you did. And thanks again for chatting. It's been great as always. And we should do this again sometime.
We can make this like a weekly or bi-weekly thing. Like I'm totally down. Love these chats.
Yeah, maybe we should. Yeah, I always enjoy talking to you and I find you inspiring and I love what you're doing for yourself and for everyone else. So yeah, thanks again for that and keep going. And I hope people connect with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I love your vast knowledge about the brain and neurotransmitters and stuff.
Can't wait to learn even more.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Tristan. I'll catch up with you another time.
Yes, ma'am. Much love.